The Panthers sweep their three-game homestand, and Carter Verhaeghe looks like he's back.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Monday, February 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez from the Hockey News. If you follow me on X at MonoMan12, follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers, and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can listen to the podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're on the YouTube channel watching this, please press that like button. And shout out to the everydayers who come back here once again to get your daily Florida Panthers fix. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can bet just $5 and you'll win, and you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app and head to FanDuel to get started. So what a weekend for the Florida Panthers as they concluded the homestand on Saturday and Sunday with a matinee game against the Chicago Blackhawks on Saturday, nationally televised, and then following that up with a win on Sunday night against the New York Islanders. Both teams were on a second end of a back-to-back. Multiple contributors. The Stars showed up on both games for the Florida Panthers, and that results in a 3-point lead in the Atlantic Division for the Cats. And here to break down the homestand and everything involving the weekend for the Panthers and across the NHL, he is my fellow colleague and my friend, David Dwork of the Hockey News. David, welcome back to the show. And it's a little bit of coincidence because usually when you're on the show, David, it's usually when the Panthers are on a little bit of a hot streak. While I was texting Alex Baumgartner right before our show saying that whenever he comes on, it's when the Panthers are in a little bit of a different direction for them. So welcome back to the show.
It's good to be back, and with that caveat, even better.
Yeah, absolutely, man. But the Panthers sweep the homestand, and it's crazy because for them, it started with both dominant first periods for the Panthers with the outside of 7 seconds for the first game of the homestand, where the Panthers give up the first goal against the Chicago Blackhawks, but then in the first period, I recorded this. I made sure to put this in my notes. At the second TV timeout for the Panthers against the Chicago Blackhawks, shot attempts were 36-3. Talk about turning it on for the Panthers after giving up that first goal. And then the Panthers against the New York Islanders, for them, it really looked like that the Panthers were the team that were healthier. I mean, the Islanders were missing a whole bunch of guys on the blue line. I mean, you see it with the acquisition of Adam Boquist, the trade for Scott Perunovich, signing of Tony DeAngelo for them. But really, first period dominance for the Panthers was the story of the entire homestand, where shots on goal, 56-17 for the Cats throughout these 3 games.
Well, that's what they've been looking for, right? They wanted to get off the fast starts. They wanted to start showing some consistency, and they did a lot of that on this homestand. You mentioned the start against Chicago. I mean, you give up a goal 7 seconds in against a team that you're kind of thinking they've had our number a little bit, even though they have been struggling. So a little extra motivation. And then, as you mentioned, it was dominant from that point on. But right now, it's like things are starting to fall into place a little bit for the Panthers. Paul Maurice has been saying for a little while that he's been happy with their overall level of play and with how they've been performing, but that screws needed to be tightened up a little bit. And now we're starting to see the results of that. You've got 3 straight on the homestand, I think 4 straight at home overall. And now they go into a tough week, 2 tough road games. You got DC, who's obviously they've been amazing this year. It's been a lot of fun to watch their progression. And St. Louis, struggling a little bit lately. They got a big win on the road, I believe, last night. But we'll see how Florida can perform on the road, and if they can keep this little momentum that they're building up, keep it going.
Yeah, after Thursday's game against the Blues, it'll only be 1 game outside of the Eastern time zone the rest of the way. And to think that even mixed up with that is a long road trip all throughout the East Coast in the middle of March for the Panthers. So, I mean, you're talking about such a scheduling advantage for the Panthers. And I will say the Panthers did have a little bit of a scheduling advantage going into Sunday night's game against the Islanders, knowing that the Islanders were going to be without Matthew Barzal, who left the Saturday's game against the Tampa Bay Lightning with a minute left. Scott Mayfield didn't play as well after leaving the game against Tampa. And to think that the Panthers getting the opposition's best test, being the champions, and to think that New York was in the middle of a 7-game winning streak, and also starting a goaltender by someone from Czechia with the first name Jakub. We saw what happened last time the Panthers faced a goaltender making their NHL debut against the Panthers. Not this time, as we saw with the scouting report, the scrambling around the net, and it really manifested in the early lead for the Panthers there on Sunday.
Yeah, I was actually Skarek, I believe, is how Goldie was pronouncing his name last night. I thought he played pretty well for a guy making his debut, just as the Montreal goaltender whose name is escaping me at the moment.
Jakub Dobeš.
Dobeš, thank you. Just as he did it when he played that awesome game for his NHL debut in South Florida. Yeah, but I mean, overall, I think you talk about like a scheduling advantage. I think at this point, the Panthers are going to take any scheduling edge they can get, considering how they've been kind of behind the 8 ball for so long with how the schedule has gone, whether it's been the long road trips, whether it's been the very strange come home for one game in the middle of like 6 on the road, 4-2 or whatever it is. It's just been really strange. And Paul Maurice actually referenced the other night that like they've had, I think, 1 or 2 all season instances where they've had 2 days off consecutive at home with no game, which is really what it takes to properly rest and recover for a lot of these day-to-day ailments that the players are going to feel. Give them that extra day. So they had that this past week, and then you saw they went into the back-to-back and they looked pretty good, other than the 7 seconds in against Chicago, which, I mean, you can give them 7 seconds, right? Then they came back and they were absolutely dominant. And against a tough Islanders team on Sunday, like you mentioned, Barzal and Mayfield got hurt in Tampa, so they were coming in on the second end of a back-to-back, a little hobbled with 2 key players out. But you know what? The Panthers have had to sustain a lot of that throughout their runs as well. They had defensemen that were out when Ekblad was out, Mikkel was out. They've had to endure Tkachuk being out of the lineup, Barkov being out of the lineup. So they've had guys miss time. And nobody cares. There's no excuses. So I think the Panthers taking care of business was big for them in this instance, and they'll be pretty happy to take a little schedule advantage wherever they can find it.
Yeah, and I tweeted this right before we recorded that the February 8th mark last year, the Panthers played 51 games. By the time we get to February 8th, which is right when the Four Nations break starts for them, right after their Saturday game against the Sens, the Panthers will play 57. So the way that the Panthers have been able to manage this condensed schedule with so many back-to-backs here, it's got to be impressive with how they've been able to manage and still put themselves in a position to still contend for the top of the Atlantic Division. But also, speaking of injuries, the Panthers this weekend were without Mackie Semskevich, who was out for both games due to illness. And then Jonah Gadjovich scores the first goal of the game for the Panthers against the Chicago Blackhawks on a goal that was reviewed, and AJ Greer was pushed into Peter Mrazek on that from the review. But just how happy the players were for Jonah Gadjovich to get that goal after not playing since December 20th, that game against the St. Louis Blues, where Barkov took over that game late on that Friday night there. But just his ability to stay ready, how it has to be quite awesome for someone like Jonah.
Yeah, and it just you mentioned how like tight knit this team is, and it brought me back to during the playoffs recently when Gadjovich was not in the lineup. I believe he was out because he had his twin sons had been born, and they gave him the game puck after the game to honor him and his family, even though he hadn't played in the game. And I remember afterwards him talking about how much that meant to him and how it showed the camaraderie of this amazing team. And so it just, it builds from that point on to where we are now. So you talk about how happy they were to see him in the lineup. They know, the players and the coaches know more than we do. Whether you're a fan or whether you're a media member that's at the rink, you don't see how hard this guy works off the ice, behind the scenes, to try to get healthy and get right and get back in the lineup. But his teammates and his coaches do. So to see him finally crack the lineup once again after dealing with that upper body injury for, I'm sure, what felt like forever, finally getting back out there and scoring in the first game back, a big goal because they had given up an early goal. It helped change the momentum, turn the tide in the game. It was just a really cool thing all around. And I think those little moments are what make the Panthers this unique team that they are. It's that they have this room where everybody's happy, everybody gets along, everybody lifts each other up. It's just this wonderfully fulfilling environment. And I hope it lasts a long time. Obviously, winning helps with that. And the Panthers have done quite a bit of winning over the past few years. But it's just such a great situation. And the Gadjovich goal, I thought, was just another prime example of what makes it so great that has nothing to do with the superstars.
Yeah, and it goes back to that interview that Paul Maurice had with Jackie Redmond after they lost the 2023 Stanley Cup Final. And then the one thing that Paul Maurice that still sticks out to me is just the group loving each other, and that's really what gave him that impression right before taking the job in Florida for him. And look what's happened for him. We're going to talk more about Paul Maurice. We're going to talk more about Verhaeghe, Dmitry Kulikov, and the celebration getting the silver stick. We're going to discuss that and more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. And Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibilities. And there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action. With live betting all game long, you could adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the app and head to FanDuel.com to get started. Just bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, the official partner of Super Bowl 59. Thank you guys once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday as the Florida Panthers sweep their 3-game homestand and the weekend against the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Islanders from Amerant Bank Arena. Once again, here with David Dwork, my colleague here at the Hockey News, to discuss everything with the weekend for the Panthers here. So, David, the ceremony for the Dmitry Kulikov, as Alex Baumgartner called it, DK1K. Love that little nickname for him for the weekend. So smart on him for referring that. But the amount of current teammates, former teammates on the video board, you like Max Zuccarello, Dustin Byfuglien, and then current guys and who are with the team, and then guys who moved on, like a Kevin Stenlund with the Utah Hockey Club, and then the ceremony getting his wife there, his kids, their own silver sticks as well for him, and then of course Brian McCabe, Bill Zito, and Roberto Luongo honoring him. And then you've seen it from start to not finish, but from the start to now for Dmitry Kulikov, just outstanding for and the fact that everybody in for warmups wearing number 7, just outstanding how the story for Kulikov can coming back and winning the cup for him, and then getting 1,000 games under his belt for the Panthers. So, and then obviously getting a win for both the actual game and after the ceremony for him.
It's crazy how full circle of it is when you think about Kulikov and his first stint with the Panthers after being a first-round pick all the way back in 2009. You'd think, okay, a first-round pick defenseman. Fast forward to 2024. There he is playing his 1,000th game. He's got a Stanley Cup. They're wearing his jersey. It all makes sense, right? You know, a little bit of a strange path to get there, obviously, with where his career took him. You know, his first 7 years with the Panthers, and then the next 7 years with 7 different teams. You know, the back injuries that he had to endure, surgeries coming back from that. You know, Paul Maurice has talked about the player that he was when he coached him in Winnipeg to the player he is now. It's just been an incredible run for Dmitry Kulikov, and couldn't be more thrilled for the man he is, for the family man he is, for the player he is. I mean, he's an excellent, solid defender now. He fits this Panthers mold well. He's a great locker room guy. His teammates love him. Like you heard, I love what Matthew Tkachuk was saying about him in the video message about how he's become one of his favorite teammates, just such a hardworking guy and a good guy. So it's really cool how it's all come around. Yeah, you mentioned Brian McCabe out there on the ice with him. McCabe was there with him for his first NHL game all the way back, 15 years ago or whatever it was. So a very cool full circle moment, and couldn't be more happy for Kulikov, both for his 1,000th game and for his second stint with here for the Panthers, and how much it's meant, I'm sure, to him and his family.
Yeah, I know you were present at the game for the 1,000th game, but on the broadcast, Steve Goldstein kept doing some Dmitry Kulikov related trivia for Randy Moeller on the broadcast. So it was pretty cool of relating that to him, just knowing, and also Steve Goldstein knowing how much he's meant to the fan base for the Florida Panthers. So still tying that in. So great for Steve Goldstein and also the Script Sports crew doing that. But the weekend MVP for the Florida Panthers here for them, Carter Verhaeghe. Four goals on the weekend on 12 shots, including 3 for 3 on Sunday, 9 shots on goal. Really, that top line was really setting the tone against the Chicago Blackhawks there of how they were able to just intercept breakout passes, especially. That was the key, getting in on the forecheck, which was, we talk about bread and butter for them. And then got multiple guys getting in on the scoring. Sam Reinhart, which that I watched that backdoor pass from Barkov to Sam Reinhart in the game against Chicago multiple times, how he was able to get it through 3 white sweaters there for Sam Reinhart to get a goal there. And then Sam Reinhart continuing it in Sunday's game. But Carter Verhaeghe, we've spoken a lot about his struggles. The analytics were saying that he was one of the unluckiest guys in the entirety of the NHL, top 10 of the unluckiest guys. But then 4 goals in these last 2 games for the Panthers. I mean, are we seeing a turnaround for him? Do you think?
I hope. Like you kind of mentioned it, the unluckiness of Carter Verhaeghe this year. I mean, his shooting percentage throughout his career has always kind of been between 14 and 16%. This year, it's been meandering around 7%. I think it's up to now almost 7.5 after scoring on 25% of his shots over the weekend. You mentioned 4 goals on 12 shots. Hopefully, the law of averages is going to start to work around for Carter Verhaeghe, because he's certainly been putting in the work. You mentioned that top line and what they've been able to produce in terms of turnovers and takeaways and the transition game. Well, when you've got, a guy like Sasha Barkov, who's basically a puck magnet, no matter where he is on the ice, he's ridiculous how good he is with a puck on a stick. Sam Reinhart, who quietly does a lot of the same stuff that Barkov does. And then you've got Carter Verhaeghe, who has just been the embodiment of tenacity since he arrived here. When he gets going on the boards, he's one of the hardest guys to take the puck away as well. Put them all together, and we're starting to see the results. I mean, now Carter Verhaeghe, he had 6 points in the 2 games. I think everybody, Verhaeghe, Reinhart, and Barkov all had multi-point games in both of the weekend games. I think Matthew Tkachuk had goals in both games, and he's had multi-point games in 3 of 6. So all the big guys are starting to really build on some momentum. I know a lot during the month of January, scoring was down, guys were sick. It was, there was a concern there as the Panthers, their stars weren't doing what the stars do, right? Fortunately for the Panthers, they're such a deep team that they were able to maintain and kind of keep an even keel. But now it's starting to turn back, and all these guys are starting to put the puck in the net, and the goaltending is starting to turn around as well. Bob's been spectacular his last few games. Spencer Knight just came off an excellent month of January, and he played quite well against the Islanders last night, particularly in the third period. So right now it's starting to come together for the Panthers, as you kind of want to see right now. And you kind of mentioned it earlier, they're getting right on to that Four Nations break, which is going to be another great chance for most of the team, not everybody, because 8 of the 22 or 21 guys in the roster are going to be playing in Four Nations, but for a lot of the guys to be able to rest and get right, and for the team to kind of hit that reset button. And as we've seen over the last few seasons under Paul Maurice, this is a team that comes off of breaks very well. So this could be lining up for an excellent stretch towards what the Panthers are hoping is another good playoff run.
Yeah, I'm looking at right now. Now Carter Verhaeghe's shooting percentage right now is at 9.1%. Just
big jump.
It's a big jump after the weekend for Swaggy there for him. And it's funny because a little bit of a scare on Sunday with 3 unanswered goals. I mean, I tweeted this, like we mentioned in the first segment. It looked like that the Panthers played an afternoon game while the New York Islanders played a night game and had to travel the very next day for them. And a little bit of, it's funny, 2 6-3 finals against the Islanders this year, and at one point in both of the games, the Islanders scored 3 straight. In the first game, it was 3 to start, and then the Panthers just scoring 6 unanswered to end the game. This was right before their trip to Finland, and then this time, taking a 2-goal lead, those 2 Carter Verhaeghe goals, and then the Panthers exploding after that, and then not giving anything after. And then I didn't even mention Carter Verhaeghe's 3rd hat trick as a member of the Florida Panthers. The other one, March 27th, 2021 against the Dallas Stars, which he did it shorthanded, even strength, and on the power play. And then April 1st, 2023, where he scored 4 goals in this one, including getting goal number 40 for him in that one, as the Panthers were starting to make a push towards towards the final wild card spot for them. So a little bit of a surge for the Panthers there at the time. So guys are stepping up, and 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 the goaltending is coming to fruition, which is the best part of it. And the best part, David, Aaron Ekblad's going to get rest during the Four Nations. The two goaltenders, the guys you need the rest the most, are the guys who are going to get the rest. And there was even conversation about it. It is because the fact that that teams are going to be up the intensity for Four Nations, that could actually help the Panthers, even the guys who are playing in the tournament, help them throughout the final stretch of the season. I think this could be an advantage, assuming that the guys going there get healthy.
Yeah, exactly. That's as you were saying all that. That was the one thing that's like in my head. It's like as long as they stay healthy, then yes, there's probably no detriment to what they're doing right now, because hockey players, hockey fans, we all crave one thing universally. No matter who we root for, no matter if we're goalies, defensemen, if we're offensive defenses, they're one thing that every hockey fan wants, and it's best on best. And that's what we're gonna get here. And that's the players are pumped up for it. The fans are ready. I'm excited. It's going to be freezing, but whatever. It should be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see just what you're talking, the intensity, like how much these guys bleed for their nations. It should be a lot of fun. And I'm hoping that the Panthers put up a good showing. There's no reason to think that, they won't. I mean, basically Team Finland is Panthers. What are they got? 4 Panthers with Barkov, Lundy, Lausti, and Meeksy. You've got Gus Forsling in Sweden. You've got Kachuk as an alternate captain for Team USA. And then you've got the Sam's Club playing for Team Canada. So no matter who's playing, Panther fans are going to have some fun to watch and to root for. I'm excited. I don't know exactly what to expect. I remember how fun the World Cup that they did was. That was a lot of fun to watch. I believe that was right before the season started, if I'm not mistaken. So this is going to be cool and kind of a mid-season thing. And I don't know, man. I just keep talking about how excited I am. I literally just got a text as we're talking that my credentials were approved. So I'm all good to go, which, I wasn't worried about it anyway, but just saw that text literally as we're talking. So it's like, all right, well, perfect timing. Let's go. So it should be a lot of fun, man. I'm pumped.
Can't wait for you for your travels there. And I requested some PTO off from my day job. Although I won't be traveling, I will be covering it from home. So I can't wait to see what you got to say when you do travel for the Four Nations out in Montreal and in Boston there for you and yourself.
I'm just going to go to the Boston run, but it'll be just as cold, I'm sure, in Boston. And that's what I'm going to say is Bure. But
so you're getting the stretch run and the fun. Hey, that's awesome for you either way.
I'll take what I can get, man.
Yeah,
it'll be fun to get out there and to cover some hockey.
And Boston's a fun city either way. So definitely. So we're going to continue the conversation on the Four Nations. Is that part of the season a little bit of a soft deadline for the NHL? We're going to react to also the other trades that happened throughout the league over the weekend and what that means for the Panthers. We are going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Third and final segment here on this Monday, February 3rd edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Monday. So David, some other numbers that I hadn't mentioned yet that I have here on my notes. The Panthers went 3 of 12 on the power play and 7 of 8 on the PK. I kept mentioning this, especially when Aaron Ekblad came back to the lineup for the Panthers, how the Panthers' discipline level has actually been so much better since he's gotten back to the lineup. When you're thinking of not going to the box and the percentages for the PK, and it really affects it. But when you think about taxing players, especially when you think about Sam Reinhart and Alexander Barkov, the amount of minutes that they logged there on the PK, although you see them as the second unit there, mostly after Lundell and Eetu Luostarinen, that has been really the standout for me lately for how the Panthers have been able to just be on this run that they're currently on.
Yeah, Ekblad's return has kind of had a ripple effect and positively impacted the team in a lot of different ways. Both his importance on special teams, because he's back on that top power play, but he's an excellent penalty killer, as you mentioned. The penalty killing unit as a whole has just been so key. I mean, you've got your solid D back there. You've got Ekblad, Forsling, Kulikov, and Mikkola. Like, you're locked in. in terms of your PK defenseman. But they've got basically three lines that they're very comfortable with rolling on the forwards, whether it's Barkov and Reinhart, whether it's E2 and Anton Lundell, or whether it's Nosek and Boquist. And remember last year, like they were working Ryan Lomberg in on the penalty kill. Like they want to have that flexibility to move the guys in and out, because whether it's a guy could take a penalty who's on your PK, a guy could be out of the lineup. So there's a lot of reasons why it's good that they have that depth. And just talking about Aaron Ekblad and the impact that he's had, 5 games back. What have they won? 4 of them now. He's got points, 5 points in 5 games, only one of which on the power play. He's having that positive effect on 5-on-5. And you talk about the discipline of the team. It's just a matter of other guys are playing less. The responsibilities are a little bit lower. They're not as tired per se. They're working. They're able to focus more. It's just an all-encompassing thing that helps out with Ekblad coming back. So I think, and Paul Maurice even mentioned it after the game. I don't remember if it was Saturday or Sunday, but mentioned just kind of that ripple effect of what Ekblad does for everybody else. So to have them healthy and going in, and what you mentioned before, Ekblad being able to kind of continue to heal up during 4 Nations, it's a good spot right now. And to see the Panthers doing it on all 3 levels as they have in the past, it's a great thing.
Also, I forgot to mention Evan Rodriguez, 2 clutch goals for the Panthers in over the weekend. One of them on a board battle won by Eetu Luostarinen to feed him in the slot to at least get the game tied at 3, and then 10 seconds into the third period against Chicago. So that's another standout player for me over the weekend for the Panthers here. But still, up and down the lineup, you're getting key contributors all over for them. So Adam Boquist, claimed off of waivers by the New York Islanders, scored a goal on his first game with the Isles there on a rebound opportunity there, and that, which I don't know if you saw the picture. He was wearing a glove that was not his for him. I think it was Anthony Beauvillier's there for them. So funny how we obviously you got to get fitted for your equipment and then getting customized of your own, but also it looked like he might have taken a little bit of a shot at the coaching staff or maybe previous stops for where he's been. But he spoke about, and I'm looking up the quote as I'm talking, but he spoke the I'm going to butcher this a little bit, but he spoke about being healthy all year and then not being given really not thinking that he got a chance. Oh, here it is. It's quote, knock on wood, this year I've been healthy the whole year, but I think there were people, they didn't appreciate my game, what I brought to the team, and they thought the other players were better to play. I'm excited for the fresh start, close quote. So what'd you make of that when you first saw the quote from Adam Boquist?
I mean, I don't blame the guy for wanting to bet on himself. It's a tough situation. He was given a lot of rain early in the season. I think, he was on the top power play. And I guess it just didn't quite work. This isn't a coaching staff that tries to beat anybody down or bury anybody. Like that's not what the Panthers have been about, beyond under just Paul Maurice. So I just think, it wasn't a very great situation by the time it all landed here. The Panthers, we've known now for over a year how happy they are with Uvis Balinskis and giving him that time. And even last season, when they sent him back to AHL Charlotte after signing him to the extension, was kind of with that understanding that you're going to be an NHL guy. So it's not a surprise to see that. The bigger surprise, I guess, would be how much they liked the play of Toby Bjornfot in his brief stint when both Ekblad and Mikkola were out. I remember when they brought him over from Vegas last season. It's been kind of a process for him, but they're happy with the progression that he's made. And look, at the end of the day, Boquist is still very young. He's cheap. He's RFA. He's going to get plenty of opportunity. And I mean, you look at, with the Islanders, even he played, I think, like 10 minutes his first game. And then because of the injuries and the situation, he had bumped up to like 17 and a half minutes when they played in Florida on Sunday. So he's going to get a chance in Long Island. Hopefully it works out for him the way it kind of did with Mike Riley the year before, plucked off waivers by the Island, and he had a great year with them. So, we'll see how it works out. But I'm hoping that it does in a positive way for Adam, just because, you don't want to root against the guy. And just because it didn't work out here doesn't mean that it can't work out for him somewhere else.
Yeah. And you think about championship teams all across sports, whenever teams want a piece of that they want a little bit of a piece of success. And when you have as much depth, you're going to want something from that and a little bit of insight, not necessarily that you're going to necessarily succeed against the opposition when you do face them, but you do want you do want that from whenever with an organization on someone who might have been squeezed out and might be given an opportunity. And like you mentioned, he's still very young here for his NHL career. So all the best to Adam Boqvist. And yeah, you mentioned Mike Riley last year. The Panthers had a lot of depth, and he ended up being the odd man out, which we hope the best for Mike Riley after dealing with the situation that's going on in his heart for him. So we hope the best for him. So we mentioned Four Nations for him for the NHL. A lot of blockbuster trades. Weirdly, they're happening on Friday nights where at least for us two, no Panther games mostly to cover on Friday nights. We're either sitting on our couches watching some NHL action or maybe taking some time off with our families, and then we see some notifications on our phones of certain trades for them. And then, hey, it just goes to show that these general managers are not resting. They are still working the phones consistently. We saw it with the Mikko Rantanen trade and Marty Necas with Colorado, and then we saw it with JT Miller going back to New York City to go with the Rangers, and then Vancouver using that cap space available to trade for Marcus Pettersson, along with the first round pick that they got to get Marcus Pettersson. Now 3 Petterssons in Vancouver, and then the trade between the Dallas Stars and the San Jose Sharks using their LTIR space for them, which Miro Heiskanen's not going to be playing in the Four Nations. It stinks that he's not going to be part of it for Finland. But then bringing in Cody Ceci and Mikael Granlund, a right-handed shot Cody Ceci, and a big body for him. So and there was a lot of noise in the trade market for not just the NHL, but the NBA. So with that crazy, what a weekend for trades. So there isn't going to be a freeze when it comes to rosters. Bill Zito is going to be part of the U.S. Front office for them in the Four Nations. So how do you think Bill Zito manages this whole thing as Four Nations looks to be a little bit of a soft deadline, but then you're trying to focus on winning with that front office, but still trying to do your job as far as making the best out of this Panthers team and trying to at least make something happen, even though they don't have that many resources right now.
Yeah, I have faith in Bill Zito more than maybe anybody other than like Pat Riley in terms of sports executives at this point, just based off his track record and success. I wish I had like more insightful answer into like how it would be handled, but I just don't know. I would think that most of the work in terms of his Team USA general manager would have been done before the tournament in terms of, creating and procuring the team and getting everybody ready for the tournament. Being that there's no official roster freeze is interesting. I think a lot of people were expecting something of a ramp up ahead of the soft deadline that you mentioned before Four Nations. And obviously that's happened to the nth degree because of the trades that you just kind of rolled through. So it'll be cool to see like how it plays out as the second deadline, because we've already had these blockbusters, right? But I think for Zito and the other GMs, it'll be interesting, and I'm hoping to maybe be able to ask some of these questions while I'm up there, if I can run into anybody and get some answers, whether it's on or off the record, just as I'm genuinely, you made me curious now a little bit more to what do they do during these tournaments? What are their responsibilities? How do they gauge them between focusing on the task at hand and the bigger task, which is, their main job? I'm actually very curious right now. So you've sent me on a little bit of a mental rabbit hole. We'll see where it leads.
Hey, this is why we challenge each other as colleagues here as well. So great, grateful to also bring that up for us too, and for you while you do have your travels over there to Boston over for the Four Nations. So once again, very excited for you and everything, and can't wait to see all the content that you're gonna put forth for the Four Nations there. But David, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Tell everybody, the listeners and viewers, where they can find you online, my friend.
No, of course. You can find me on Twitter or X, whatever it's called, at David Dwork. My weekly hockey show with Roy Bellamy is called The Hockey Show, and you can download it anywhere. Podcast, you can watch it on YouTube. It's through the Levitard Network, on the DraftKings Network. It's a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun with that. And my written work is on the Hockey News, just thehockeynews.com/Florida, and you'll get all your Panthers stuff right there. Armando pops up occasionally as well, and we always love to see him on there. But thank you for having me. As always, it's always a great chat being here. Fun conversation, friendly face. So My pleasure, man.
Absolutely. And see you very soon, my friend. So can't wait to have you on again soon.
Hopefully we'll be seeing each other in a press box in the not too distant future.
Absolutely. And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with David Dwork, and you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We're your team every day.